and gentlemen, and particularly the scholars, I am so glad to see you here today. What you see on the screen, what is happening here? Why is it happening? To whom does it belong? Where is it going? Where does it come from? How does it work? And who is behind this? And many other similar questions. This is what one return fleet of the Dutch East India Company looked like. It was the return fleet of 1719 of Admiral Van Steelant. This is one return fleet, and there were about 150 of these. Next slide, please. This is the technology. Well, first let me say, it is an armed cargo vessel, strong, durable, practical, manageable, and reliable. This is the technology that made it possible for a small and poor country like the Netherlands, without any timber for shipbuilding, without iron for cannon or anchors, without copper for nails or cotton for sails, to operate successfully thousands and thousands of miles. It will be hundreds of thousands of kilometers from home. Next one. This is the technology that made it possible for the Netherlands to master the climatic difficulties of the Little Ice Age. Have you heard of the Little Ice Age before? No? Yes? Okay. So from today you know about the Little Ice Age. Read all about it. Read as much as you can possibly find about the Little Ice Age or the Minor Ice Age. Declaim Aztec Pack. It was 5 centuries of global cooling. 5 centuries of global cooling. We are now in a period of global warming, and you can see the effects around. And to turn it into, instead of a disaster, into the glorious Dutch Golden Age. Next please. That seal there in the red wax is the size of a side plate. The document is the so-called octrooi or charter, which the Dutch government gave to the company on the 20th of March 1602, now 423 years ago. It awarded the company by this document the monopoly to trade to the east of the Cape of Good Hope, to build fortifications, to declare war, to make peace, to sign treaties and agreements with foreign potentates, powers, to appoint governors and judges, and to coin money. Now these were rights normally granted to governments by a king. And here we have the government granting it to a merchant company, like Pick n Pay, Checkers, anyone, Swellen Drank Winkel, any one of these. And so began the world's first multinational company, the world's first firm to issue shares, and the owner of the Western world's first corporate trademark. We will look at the trademark a bit later. In South Africa, that trademark is now owned by the VOC Foundation. And the next one. This is the fleet of 1720. 1720. The fleet of Admiral Van Steelant. Now, the company, the Dutch East India Company, was the Netherlands' biggest ship owner, the biggest taxpayer, and the biggest employer. For almost 2 centuries, from 1602 to 1795, I think they missed the 2 centuries by 7 years. The company's return fleets, about which we are going to talk here today, that is the fleet of Admiral Van Steelant. The fleets carried the rare eastern trade goods between the eastern sources and the markets in Europe. And the next one. The companies, I just call it the company. Officially, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie. I just call it abbreviated to the company. The company's Amsterdam headquarters still exists. Next. In daily use by the University of Amsterdam. And the next, just go back one please. On the second floor there, those windows there, 1, 2, 3, 4 windows. Now come to the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, there. And now the next picture. The company's directors meeting in that room on the second floor, meeting here in 1757, were called Year 17 because there were 17 directors. In English translated to Lords 17. Now look at the pictures there on the wall, and the next one. The same room with it restored with a table and 17 chairs, and it is now used by the University of Amsterdam, and there you see what is called students. The next one. The 6 participating chambers of commerce, just like here in South Africa, you would have the Swellendam Kamer van Koophandel, Montague Kamer van Koophandel, Robertson Stellenbosch Kamer van Koophandel. They all put their money together and were the chambers of Amsterdam, Delft, Rotterdam, Hoorn, Zeeland.
Rotterdam.
No, that is Rotterdam, and that is actually Enkhuizen, green and red, yes, Enkhuizen. Each chamber used its own flag on its offices and on its ships and on its workshops and its timber yards and its rope walk and that kind of building. And the next one. Each chamber, this is the monogram, each chamber used its own version of the corporate logo with the initial letter of the chamber inserted above. The decision by Lord 17 to add the letter says very clearly the initial letter should be put below the monogram because the company is bigger than the city. But no, pride and headstrongness still as today then ran among the people, and we have it on top. Amsterdam, Middelburg, there's another version of the Middelburg, Zeeland, where the province is given pride of place. Rotterdam, Enkhuizen, and Wirren, and Delft, and at the Cape, that is what we had, with a C for Kabul. And that is the monogram or logo of the sister company, this time the West India Company. Now you know where the West Indies are. They were in Johannesburg yesterday and they beat the Proteas. Those people. The West India Company geoctroeerde West-Indische Compagnie. And they traded mostly in slaves, carried slaves from West Africa and sold them to the settlers in the West Indies, where the African slaves worked on the sugar plantations, in America on the cotton plantations, and down in Brazil, tobacco and sugar mostly. So those were the big slave traders. And yes, that's the next one, please. Now, can you see the pictures clearly at the back? Yes. Okay. Good eyes. Very. Each chamber built its own ships in its own shipbuilding yard. And this was in Amsterdam, and it stood where the Hortus Botanicus in Amsterdam, the zoo and the botanical gardens are now. The region is called the Artes. Stood this 5-story warehouse and the necessary buildings for shipbuilding. You see the one with the chimney, for instance, is where wood was bent. Now, where did the wood come from? Because certainly not from the Netherlands. There's no timber there. There's plenty of mud flats then, but no forests. The wood came along the Rhine River to the sea in Amsterdam. And also they fetched timber from Norway and Sweden and other parts of what we call Scandinavia. But that is pine. The oak required for shipbuilding came from France, when they were at peace with France, and Germany. Okay, the next one, please. Now, that is a beautiful sight. And these 3-masted cargo vessels have often been compared to cathedrals. Now, the nearest that I have been to a cathedral in South Africa, I'm not counting the small little churches in Cape Town and so on. They are called cathedrals, but they really are nothing compared to what you see in Europe. The nearest that I've seen in South Africa is a part of the forest, the Knysna forest, where you can walk from the National Road about 100 yards into the forest, and you stand among the tall bluegums mostly, but most beautiful and most impressive. The company sent these magnificent ships out from the Netherlands to the east in 3 groups annually. They were called the Kermisvloot, the Paasvloot. The Paasvloot, it is now about Easter time, and therefore the Paasvloot would sail out about this time of year, late March, early April. And then the one called the Kersfeestvloot, which explains itself. The Dutch invented the technology. You can see the wooden box there. It is called a kameel. It is 2 wooden boxes, and they are attached to the sides of the ship. And they are pumped full of water so that they sink below the ship. And then the water is pumped out, and they rise, and as they rise, they lift the ship with them. That is how you get over a sandbar at the mouth of a river like the A River outside Amsterdam. That instrument, did I mention it, is called a cameel. Next one, please. Here we have a map. Now, ships from the three northern chambers, Amsterdam, Woerden and Enkhuizen, departed from Texel. There is Texel Island, and it went through there. That town is called Den Helder. So the Dutch called this exit here Helsdeur. They left through Helsdeur and into the channel. While those from the southern chambers, like Delft and Rotterdam, and what was the other one now?
Middelburg.
Middelburg, of course, on Zeeland Island. There is the city of Middelburg. That is Walcheren, and the province is called Zeeland. They left from Goeree and Vlissingen there into the channel. These outward bound, uitvarende, the outward bound vessels carried little cargo, almost nothing, other than supplies and provisions for the company's 104 trading stations in the east, and silver bars, big chunks of silver, about 10 kilograms each, to pay salaries and to trade in the east. Now, what about the Cape? But the Cape wasn't a trading station. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking that the Cape was a trading station. There was nothing to trade here. When I was at school, they called the Cape a verversingsstatie, or a refreshment. Please forget that. Verversing has to do with entertainment and eating and drinking. And that is not why the Maritime Replenishment Service at the Cape was established in 1652. Now, maritime means the sea. Replenishment, it is whatever you need to be replenished. You need water, there it is. You need food, there it is. You need your ship repaired, that's not refreshment, it is ship repairs. So we can't call it a refreshment station. We repair your ship. We load 4 wagon loads of firewood on board every ship. 4 wagon loads of firewood for the next leg of the journey. Because you need to cook your food. You want to drink a cup of tea sometimes. You want to iron a shirt sometimes. And you burn that wood to ashes. Another cup of tea, another fire. Next meal, another fire. Now, we are still about the uitvarende, the outward bound fleets that left from here and from there at Texel. Now, these ships sailed in small groups of about 3 or 4, not in groups of 20 or 25. It's not necessary. Because they are so cheap, mean, poor, what can you call them, enemies are not really interested in them. Why waste bullets on an empty ship? So they are in no danger and they safely sail to the Cape. Next slide. And this is also something to learn, because in my experience, the foundations of history, the foundation of history is geography. History is just geography with people in it. Look at the geography. Look at the Boer War, for instance. What is it about? Gold, geography. Look at the Great Trek. What is it about? Land, geography. And so on. Now, the outward bound follow the black line. Ships used the the rotation of the semi-permanent high-pressure system in the North Atlantic. In the North Atlantic, high-pressure systems rotate anti-clockwise. There's another one. In the Indian Ocean, rotate anti-clockwise. In the southern hemisphere, they rotate. Sorry, I made a mistake. This is clockwise. These are anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere, anti-clockwise. And as they rotate, they move the air and they move the water of the sea. And moving water is called current, ocean current, and moving air is called wind. Those were the things that drove the ships. And the other thing that drove a ship was a good captain and a vigorous crew. Men of the right energy and men of the right spirit. Today it is called spirit and energy, it is called spook and diesel. But remember, what was required to move those ships tens of thousands of miles to the east where they traded. This was the trading area. The current that they used, the Canaries current, Canary Islands are there, the Canaries current, then go over into the Brazil current, and here you pick up the great westerly drift, and you approach the Cape from the west. This route was compulsory. A captain could be fined or dismissed if he did not follow this route, because in business, time is very important. Therefore, you want to do the journey between the sources and the market in the shortest possible time. Okay, so I named the currents for you, and now they were at the Cape. The route, by the way, was called after the ship's captain who first discovered it. His name was Brouwer, his surname Brouwer, so it's called the Brouwer route. And let's look at an outward bound, next one please, an outward bound fleet in Table Bay. We know it is Table Bay because it says so at the top. And there is Table Mountain, and here is Lions Leeuwenberg, it says there, Leeuwenberg. Lions Head is here. Here are the ships, and they are facing, a ship will also face the wind, and not also all waves. So the wind seems to be coming here from the Lion's Head, which is southwest. Now, can you tell me what is the famous summer wind in Cape Town? Yeah, that's what they say, the southeast. And if we look here on the shore, they have a ship's sail, a piece of canvas spread to protect the fire. Can you see which way the smoke is blowing there? It comes round and it comes from the southeast. Here it blows from the southwest, here it blows from the southeast. This is called the city stadskom or Tafel, the Table Valley, Tafel Valley. In the Table Valley, the summer wind is from the southeast. There's a very good reason for it. While here in the bay and here on the Cape Flats where I live, a place called Pinelands, it is southwest. Strange, an anomaly, but there is a very, very good reason for it. And we have here 2 tents, one for the officers and one for the sick. And we have a small group of armed men, soldiers, and there is one of them shooting down and shooting dead an indigenous person, one of the Koina fries. They call them Hottentots. We don't use that word anymore. We call koina is one of the words, one of the names that we use. Now, before 1652, this is certainly before 1652, you can see that very well because there are no structures on the beach. Before 1652, maritime replenishment in Table Bay was very, very difficult. There were absolutely no resources. The crews had to find and collect what they needed in the way of firewood, water, vegetables, naturally not garden vegetables but wild stuff from the veld. And if there happened to be indigenous herdsmen present, because this was the grazing here was miserable, there was hardly any grain, then some meat was obtained. But a progressive trading firm like the Dutch East India Company needed a permanent maritime replenishment facility. And so they sent Van Riebeeck out in which year?
1652.
1651.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. And the diary begins in 1651. The Van Riebeeck diary. They set out before Christmas in 1651. And they arrived in 1652, April, and they went ashore on the 7th, and they started building. Now, the next picture, please. It shows in the distance their structures and ships on the anchorage, and the ship Africa. We know it is Africa by the painting there of a black king with a golden crown, of course, and slaves and servants and wild animals like lion and elephants, etc. And look, it is under the Rotterdam flag. Now, during the 10 years of his commandership, 1652 to 1662, the very hard-working Van Riebeeck turned a problem into a success. What was his problem? He was supposed to provision the ships, but in reality, in fact, the ships had to provision him to keep him alive. The ships had to give him food, bread and meat and things. But he changed that. He turned that problem into a success when you remember the Free Burgers, 1650. He turned the production system out of that poor and barren valley, and he took it round the Devil's Peak into the Liesbeek Valley, where there is hardly any wind, and tall trees grow, and where the soil is fertile, and there is a permanent, a constant river called the Liesbeek, things that are not found in the Table Valley. When Van Riebeeck did that, he changed the whole picture. Now this painting shows the outward bound vessel Africa. I can't call it Africa, it didn't have an English name. Entering Table Bay under the Rotterdam flag. Now we know it is outward bound because it lies very high in the water. It's almost empty. This happened in 1675, and that is fine and historically correct. The painting hangs in Constantia Manor House, which used to be Simon van der Stel's house, burned down and rebuilt, and it is now Constantia Manor House and a museum. And there hangs this picture that was bought in the Netherlands, and the brass plate says that the picture is attributed to the famous painter Renier Nooms, but it is a fake. It is a fake. In 1675, Noons was already dead for 12 years. Now, I'm just telling you so that when you go into museums, keep your eyes open. Don't just accept and believe, oh, this is Rotterdam, this is Africa running in 16 and the paper is not. Go and find out. Use your head. Use your knowledge of local history. And Africa. Now the next painting is, the next picture please, is that focused?
Yep.
Okay, I accept your word for it because you sit over there and I stand here. The ship, the same ship, Africa, with a black king. This time, it is a different flag. It is the national flag, it is not the Rotterdam flag. And the year is 8 years later, and here is Africa again in Table Bay as an outward bound ship. But look in the background. Look at the buildings in the background. That plain, empty valley has been developed with houses. And it is the only painting that I know of that shows Van Riebeck's fort and a castle that was commenced in 1665 on the same canvas, the only one. And this one hangs in the castle, or Cape Town, or let me say, it used to hang in the castle. I'm not sure about that castle anymore. The ship Africa did not return from this voyage. It was lost at sea during its 5th homeward or return voyage as part of a retour which often happened. Now, next painting, back to the Brouwer route. On leaving Cape Town, the ships dropped down to 40 degrees south. Not further south or you will be among the ice. And then you turn west using the great westerly drift and the anti-clockwise rotation and the West Australia current, and that takes you to the island of Java. And now the next one will show you what the island of Java looked like. Can we see it, please? Castile Batavia, and ships on the anchorage, and a channel dug in, surrounding the castle, and forming moats or grachten through a city. Now, Governor General Jan Pieters Koen took the old city on the island called Jakarta in 1619, and he had it flattened and rebuilt on the Dutch pattern with regular square blocks surrounded by a grachten. And a fine city it was in the beginning. And in the castle, Castile Batavia, the 4 bastions were named Rubein, Smaragd, Diamant, Pearl. That tells you the whole story, doesn't it? What does it tell you? We are here to make money. We are here to trade, to do business. And this was the company's eastern headquarters. The castle had offices for the Governor General and the Council of India, and offices and accommodation for scores of clerks, huge warehouses and barracks for hundreds of soldiers and hundreds of slaves. Now the question that I hear from the floor there, what was the Council of India? The Council of India were senior officials in the castle who formed what the Lords 17 were in the Netherlands. They formed in the East. They controlled the trade. They controlled things like staff movements and promotions, and the handling of ships and what ship to when to send where. That was the Council of India. And then, as I said, scores of clerks, because they did a lot of writing. And those writings are preserved today, 421 years later, in the archives in Jakarta, now an independent republic, and they are preserved in the archives in Cape Town and in the archives in Den Haag. If you put all those bound documents, bound in volumes this thick, together, they stretch kilometers and kilometers. And they are the most interesting material to study. You may want to become a doctor, or a nurse, or you may want to become a lawyer, or a farmer. That does not prevent you from reading the company's most interesting documents, either in their manuscript form or in published form. For much has been published and is still being published, because the history of the Dutch East India Company is a very popular hobby worldwide. Now, let us look at the next one. There is Arabia, the tip of Africa, the Indian Ocean, the tip of Madagascar, and Arabia and Afghanistan and Pakistan and India and Ceylon and Bengal and Siam and China and Japan. There were trading stations. And on most of these islands where something that grew that could be sold in the Netherlands, they built a fort and they planted a staff and an army and whatever was required. Now I'll tell you more about that. The outward bound ships, so far we've only dealt with outward bound ships and not return ships, were used in the Asian and inter-island trade for 3 or 4 years before they were sent home with a cargo as part of a return fleet. For instance, tea, or what we call China, earthenware, glazed, China from China, tea or China from China, where am I? Was an example, or as an example, or for an example, tea or earthenware carried to Batavia to be exported to Europe. But part of it was again used, say that tea was sent to the Spice Islands to trade for spices. And the spices were brought to Batavia to be sent to Europe, but part of those spices were traded here in India for cottons or precious stones from Pakistan, the rubies and the emeralds and the diamonds. From Mocha, there, the westmost one, came coffee. And you could take the coffee to Java to be sent to Europe, and part you could trade elsewhere. Now let us look from from the Spice Islands, for instance, cloves and nutmeg and pepper were three of the spices from the Spice Islands here among the eastern islands. Printed cottons here from the Malabar coast, the west coast of India, or blue dye from the plant indigo, the color of your blue jeans, indigo. Came and saltpeter traded in Bengal. Now, what do we want to do with saltpeter? Not put it over our porridge, certainly.
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder. The three ingredients of gunpowder are saltpeter, that's the one that makes the gas, that makes the explosion, and charcoal, that's the one and sulfur, that's the one that keeps the fire, and charcoal is the one that makes sparks. So very important for warfare. Now what do we want with warfare? War is the most unpleasant thing. But if you want to build shops and set up trade, the Portuguese, for instance, were here before the Dutch. The Portuguese were on the island of Sri Lanka, then it was called Ceylon. But now you want to drive these Portuguese away, and you want to set up your ships and your trading station on Sri Lanka. That's why you need gunpowder, to make big explosions. And from Ceylon, from the south coast, pearls and sugar from central Ceylon, the kingdom of Kandy. You know the English candy for sweets? Sugar, Kandy. So it is pearls and sugar and tea and ivory and elephants. We trade in elephants as well. Those five things from Ceylon. And here is the port of Surat, way up a river, and what is now Pakistan, but at the time was called Akhtar, India. Pakistan, precious stones, and north of that, what is now Afghanistan. Oh yes, I'll talk about just now. They came through the ports of Surat, and from there to Java, and once a year sent with a return fee to the Netherlands. The next one, please. Do you know her? Yeah. The Vermeer's girl with pearl earring. Now, the pearl earring we now know came on a return ship from Ceylon. But that's not all. By the way, let me say, in the cargo holds of the ships were not only valuable trade goods, there was also language, there was religion. These things were also carried around among the islands and from the east to the Cape. Just listen. You know the word krabbe. Now the word krabu, is a jewel for the ear. That's an Indonesian word. But there are many, many Indonesian words. We'll come to them shortly. Now let this girl represent the famous Golden Age. And I mentioned Afghanistan, and I mentioned indigo, the color of your jeans. Now that cloth was colored with indigo. It was dyed with indigo, the blue dye that comes from a plant. But there is another. This fellow Vermeer, Johannes Vermeer, there is now at this moment in the Rijksmuseum in the Netherlands for 3 months, an exhibition of 20 paintings by Johannes Vermeer. I wish I could be there. Vermeer loved blue. Now, on the canvas, he did not use indigo. The girl went to a shop where she bought the thing already dyed. It was colored by somebody who colors textiles using indigo, and the girl bought it in blue. And she went home and Vermeer painted her. But Vermeer didn't use indigo to paint this. He used something that came out of the mountains of Afghanistan and was exported through the harbor of Surat and carried to Batavia and loaded onto return ships and carried to the Netherlands, where a miller, a powder miller with a windmill, it is an ore. Now you know that an ore comes from a mine. And that ore is called lapis lazuli. Lapis lazuli means blue stone. And it is ground into a fine powder. And Vermeer goes over to where he sees the windmill and he buys the ground blue powder and he takes it home and he mixes the blue powder with oil. And he uses that blue to paint the cloth. When you look at a Vermeer and you see blue, then remember the name lapis lazuli. Where does it come from? Afghanistan. How did it get to the Netherlands in Vermeer's day? Return fleet.
Yeah. That's right.
Now, we've talked about the trade and the goods being carried to the city of Batavia to be prepared, loaded in boxes and crates and bales. And there is a description of how things are loaded in that book about the return food. Can we go to the next one, please? The 12 or 15 or 18 or 21 ships selected for the return fleet were cleaned and prepared at Onrust Eiland, at Eiland Onrust. You see those windmills? Now they don't pump water, they drive a driving shaft. For instance, to twist fibers together to form cables this thick for a ship's anchor. Now the ships are usually empty, their masts are taken out with those cranes there, and the ship is turned on its side and it is cleaned of old seaweed and barnacles and stuff below the waterline, and it is repaired every seam in the hull of the ship and every seam on the deck. The word is kalfaat, K-A-L-F-A-A-T, kalfaat, and then it is tarred with boiling tar, and this is spread over the seams to make it watertight. This movement is called pie. The tar is water pie. And then the precious cargoes were loaded, observing strict rules. What goes where in the hull, in the cargo hold. For instance, we don't want any contamination. You don't put your strong spices like pepper. You don't put your pepper on top of tea, because certainly there will be contamination. Or you don't put a blue indigo on top of yellow silk. There will be contamination. The whole thing ends up blue or green. So there were strict rules as to what goes where. And the cargoes consisted of, amongst others, I say amongst others because there were many other things that are not mentioned here. Tea and silk and various cottons, like the baftas, the salapuris, the nenekwas, the fokas, the chinzas, all colored cottons, and carpets and dyes and rice and chinaware and saltpeter and spices like nutmeg and cloves and pepper and whatnot, and copper and precious stones, I mentioned them, and sugar, I mentioned. Those are the cargoes that are carefully packed in the holds of the return ships. Then an admiral, can we have the next one please? An admiral was appointed. Now the admiral was usually a senior official who wanted to return home. A time-expired man. He was 60 years old. He managed to survive. He made himself rich, and now it was time to go home. And this one, Johannes Van Steelant, repatriated as admiral in 1730, a widower with 5 children. Small children. His wife died very young. I discovered the journal of his voyage of 1713 in the Special Collections Catalogue of the University of the Witwatersrand. And I used it as the central theme of the first history of the Dutch return fleet system, which was published in a book last year. Have a look at the book. Next one. Yes, that is the book. It is chock full of information about the return fleets. They are for sale here. In the shop they cost 360, but you get it today for 300. It is hardcover and with a dust jacket and scores of illustrations. They don't make them like that anymore. Now, the return fleet is ready to depart homeward. Can we look at the next one? Here you see the fleet. This is Van Asselaar's fleet of 1771. The fleet lies drawn up in 2 lines with a flagship at the head. Here are rowboats with flags and banners. What is happening here? Firstly, the crews are summoned on board. Can you see that on each ship the 4 topsail is hanging loose? Now, that sign is a signal to the crew to come on board. We are ready to depart. In these boats, the admiral, the vice admiral, and the rear admiral were rowed past the ships and introduced to the crews, and the crews lining the rails would take off their hats and say, "Good day, sir." In other words, they must admit him as their leader and obey every instruction to the letter. The fleet always departed before Christmas, about the 20th of December, always departed before Christmas for several good reasons. Look at this return fleet, the next one. This is the return fleet of 1648, Admiral Bonnebrand Geleens de Jonge. He is in the ship Walvis, the flagship Walvis. You know the flagship with the main mast, the national flag at the main mast. But you can see here's a Rotterdam flag, black and white is Delft. There's another Delft, and I see Zeeland, and a wooden, the red, white, red. And notice that on the stern of the ship, it's called the spiegel. The name of the ship is carved and painted, not in lettering, W-A-L-V-I-S, but a painting of a whale. So, because the sailors who were illiterate could recognize a whale when they see one, but if it was written there, they wouldn't know what it says. It is only later that sailors became somewhat more literate. Now, this painting still hangs in the Gemeente Museum in Alkmaar after 370 years today. And it is still a glorious spectacle, the return fleet of Wollebrand Geleens de Jonge in 1648. Yes, I think it will still swell the heart of every Dutch man, woman, and child. Now, the next one, painting, the next shows us a map of the northwestern tip of Java Island. There is Batavia and Onrust Island. And you go among these islands, and it takes a long time to get into the open sea. Why does it take a long time? Because it is in the tropics, and there's hardly any wind. So the ship lies still for days on end. Finally, after about 3 weeks, look, there is the famous Krakatau. What is Krakatau known for?
Volcano.
Kaboom, a tremendous explosion in the 1883, I think it was. It was heard all over the world. Bits and pieces were picked up all over the world. The Prince of England is there. And here the ships would assemble and top up their water and their firewood, their fuel, and fresh provisions for the last time before they head out through the Behouden Passage into the Indian Ocean and take up the formations that they were appointed to. See the next one? Now, the watchkeeping officers, the opperstuurman, 3 stuurlui, and 2 or 3 derdebalken. The captain himself was not a watchkeeping officer. The captain was the captain. And the admiral of the fleet was not a sailor. Van Steelant was a merchant, but he was appointed as admiral. Now the watchkeeping officers kept a diary on board. It is called the deck log. And he sketched the appointed position of every ship. He sketched it so that they would not lose place. Here we have Castricum, that's the flagship. Opperdus, what is that? Berkenrode, Flora. Now we are on Flora. We are on the ship Flora. And here is Magdalena, Prattenburg, and there is the real admiral on Flensburg, and Soeterlandskerke, and the Vis, and Haugsburg. And order of sailing of the return ships, mainly, and there they are named here. So here is your admiral, your vice admiral, and your rear admiral. What it says here, I can read to you. I suppose it wouldn't make sense. But if you would like to hear, I can read a line or two. Zondag, the 28th. Sunday, the 28th. Small winds, you see these abbreviated, in the morning, and voor de middag, before midday, de wind, zuidoost en zuid ten oosten. The wind, southeast and south by east. Gemeen, again abbreviated, general, and brandseilskoelte. Now, a koelte is not a shady spot, like under a tree. A koelte is a breeze. And a brandseilskoelte is a breeze that allows you to hoist, to shake out, because it is already hoisted. Remember, these people didn't hoist sails like you hear on the radio and in the newspapers. They hoisted the sail. No. They dropped the sails. They shook them out. The sails were already hoisted. And a brandseilskoelte is a breeze that requires you to shake out your foretop. Okay, and so what happened during the day, the whole day? There is the next day, Maandag, die 29ste. But what happened during, how far they progressed, what course they took, and you learn lovely words like travadig wind. There. Travadig lucht is a unsteady wind. It blows from the left, blows from starboard, port, sometimes from above. You get that in the tropics. And then the next one, it shows us Admiral Bassma's fleet. Quite a big fleet. Van Steelant's fleet, the one that we are following in that book, Retourfloed, had hardly set out when smallpox broke out in the cabin of the flagship Sundenberg among the Admiral's children, one after the other, and it raged in that family for a month. Now it is called smallpox because children get it. There's another kind of pox that adults get, but it is not the same germ or virus, something quite different. In the Dutch, kinderfokken, and here it was among the children. The adults didn't get it. The Admiral didn't get it. Why not? Possibly because in the East he'd already been exposed to some kind of pox. His eldest daughter of 13 didn't get it, Petronella. Why not? She was old enough, possibly, to have been exposed to some kind of the disease in the East. But the others were 8 and 6 and 4 and 2 and real little children. Now, back to the Brouwerhof, please. They left Batavia and they are using the anti-clockwise movement of the current and the wind. But now there is something very dangerous here. Northeast of Mauritius, you pick up during February, April, March, at the height of the southern summer, you pick up hurricanes. Now, hurricanes are extreme. They arise because of the extreme heat of the ocean, something like 25, 26 degrees Celsius. And there's a lot of evaporation. And as the water vapor goes up, it forms a vortex. And this hurricane does not only circle anti-clockwise, but it also moves in a big anti-clockwise circle there. And when it comes over Africa, it precipitates, it drops all that water on Rhodesia and, not Rhodesia, well, Zimbabwe and Mozambique and even Durban gets it. Wasn't there a tropical hurricane around about February that that came in from the sea and precipitated and moved outwards again, moved out to sea, completed a full circle. But those hurricanes at sea, those tropical hurricanes, caused the company to lose about 50 of its precious return ships with crews and cargoes. 50 over 2 centuries. And there are several stories of human drama, terrible suffering of drownings and castaways and death, like the books of Andries Stockram and Germany van Kerkhoven. They describe their misadventures here due to tropical storms. And now but fortunately for Van Steelant's fleet, they did not encounter any tropical forms. There were some Ceylon ships. Now these Ceylon ships came from, of course you know which island. And they came down and they joined the fleet at the Cape. And these Ceylon ships that were to join Van Steelant did encounter and suffered terribly of a tropical hurricane here. One of the ships encountered 2 tropical hurricanes. It could be the same one that went out and in again. Now, and then you pick up the Ogalus current. The Mozambique current becomes the Ogalus current, and it carries you around Cape Ogalus and into Table Bay, but not directly into Table Bay. You have to, there is a certain safety measure, a procedure that you have to do before you can enter Table Bay. Let us look at the next one, please. Van Steelant drew this sketch. Here in his writing he says, "The Kaapse Berge, the Cape Mountains, vertoont hun aan ons, showed themselves to us. At 5 o'clock, the middag, the afternoon, August." Now they are in Camps Bay. You know Camps Bay? Right. And this is what he saw, and this is what he drew. Nieuwenkop and Staart van de Leeuwberg, the tail of the Lion Mountain, and Houtbaarsbergen, and the corner of Tafelberg, and the Witte Steenbergen. But the most important thing that he drew is that. That is the flag post on top of Lion's Head. And he was most amazed not to see a coloured flag. Because in Batavia they had been warned there will be a coloured flag on Lion's Head. We are not going to tell you now that it will be red and white or blue and yellow or something like that. Because an Englishman may capture you at sea and he may torture you until you tell him that the safety signal is a blue and yellow flag. So we are not going to tell you. But we put the information in an envelope and we seal it with the red wax and we put it among your papers. And you open it where you can see a flag on Lion's Head. And here he arrives on the 11th of February, late in the afternoon, and there is no flag. What does he do? The flag is there to say, it is safe, you can enter the bay. If there is no flag, don't enter the bay, because the French or the British or both of them had taken over the Cape. Don't go into Table Bay, but run straight for home. What was he to do? He anchored, although there was a northwest wind that could drive his fleet onto the rocks of Camps Bay, they anchored for the bay, and the next morning they sent out a ship to go and look, one ship, to go and see what it is. And their ship, Leitsman, fired the agreed cannon signals, 6 shots, and that it was okay, and then the fleet upped anchor, and they sailed into the bay. And to the surprise of everyone, to the surprise of the whole of Cape Town, they didn't know that the return fleet had entered and was here, was on our doorstep. How did they get here? Because the harbour master and the fiscal is the top policeman, the top lawman, and the man from the hospital, those 3 officials had to go out to the flagship and inspect the flagship and then report to the governor, yes, all is okay, you can come in. In this case, it did not happen. There was no report made to the governor. And so the ship sailed into the bay. The fleet sailed into the bay. And the acting governor, a chap called Willem, he wasn't even in the castle. He was at one of the outstations enjoying a bit of a break there. And Van Steelant didn't like this at all. Not at all. But there was worse. Because the next day, the Admiral's family's washing were carried ashore to the slave lodge to be washed by the slaves. And like that, pox broke out in the slave lodge and spread throughout the whole town and killed half the population. Half, 50% of the population. If the flagman had given the warning by hoisting the correct flag, it would not have happened. Now, can we look at oh yes, let me just tell you, where was the flag? Whose name, no, back one. Whose name was, coincidentally, Van den Berg. And there's a little hut here that you can't see. It is behind that. And he lives there. Van den Berg lives there. Why wasn't Van den Berg at his post with a secret flag ready to hoist? And another thing that he had to do was to fire the cannon. There's a cannon up here. How did they get it there? Spookadiesel. Seamanship. And fire the cannon, and the governor or acting governor hears the cannon from the hill, and he sets the whole train in motion. He sends the fiscal and the harbour master and the doctor out in a boat to meet the flagship. He sends slaves from the hospital with, what do you call these things, carriers, to carry a body on, stretchers, to carry the sick up to the hospital, to get emergency supplies ready on the jetty, etc. In this case, it didn't happen, and the pox got on shore. Now you may ask, but were these children already recovered? Yes, they were recovered. About a month after they left Batavia, and they were on a 3-month journey from December to February. They were recovered. But a remarkable thing is that the pox virus can live outside the human body. I have one case in the book there of 30 years. A certain body who died of pox, 30 years in the grave, and the grave was opened to put another body, and all the funeral goers gathered round the grave, picked up the pox. After 30 years. There was another case in India that I couldn't find confirmation of, that graves were opened after 80 years. for road widening. They emptied some old graves to widen the road. Those road workers all picked up the pox and died after 80 years. It's a tremendously strong virus. Now let us look at the next one. We are not far from the end. This is a drawing of Cape Town. You could perhaps enlarge it a bit to show the castle and the jetty in front. Here's the jetty. And the harbour master's store and the church and the hospital and some of the houses here. Oh, there is the Lion's Head with the flagstaff and the hut here. And do we have the gallows here?
Yeah.
Yeah, there they are. That was called the Gouwgeheuvel. Gouwgeheuvel, where the bodies were displayed. They were not anchored there, but they were displayed there because the fleet is going to anchor here, and they will always keep your eye. That is your example. Krap in your spoor. Behave yourself. Be very careful. We are a very, very strict, almost barbarous lot here in command. Now this drawing shows Cape Town in 1710 during the visit of Admiral Van Steelant. And here on that jetty, some cargo was offloaded from the return ships, like rice for the Cape. Also, Eastern convicts and slaves that were sent to serve their punishment at the Cape. And these people were the ancestors of our so-called Cape Malays. With them came the Muslim faith and a score of more than a score, many more than a score. What is a score? 3.
20.
20. Thank you. More 2-3 score of words in the Afrikaans language. I mentioned Pulen earlier. There is Pisang, there is Suwat. Do you remember the little silver coin called the Tiki? Yeah, a little 3-penny piece. Now count in the Malay language. Satu, dua, tiga. Tiga is 3. That's where the tiki comes from. I mentioned krabbel, but there are many, many others. Now I said that within 2 weeks, smallpox was rife in Cape Town, and the epidemic raged for a full 8 months. And more than half the population of the town died. Another thing is that admirals like Van Steelant were also commissioned to inspect the Maritime Replenishment Service. Did it function the way it should? And to inspect the government. Is the government up to scratch? Are they showing the right attitude? Are they working hard enough? Van Steelant found here an acting governor named Willem Helot who was absolutely no good. A cheat and a crook and lazy beyond words. And he had him dismissed. So that was part of the Admiral's task. Right now we're on the way home. We are leaving Table Bay, next one. And this looks rough, tough, and noisy. So after about 6 weeks of Noordverfassing, maritime replenishment, and ship repairs, they set out on the last leg of the journey home. This is the only painting that I know of a return fleet departing, leaving Table Bay. And here they have a good, strong southeaster to help them out of the bay. And the next of Johannes Kunes at St. Helena Island in 1638. Now before Van Riebeeck, when the Maritime Replenishment Service was established at the Cape, the company's ships replenished here at St. Helena Island. Today you find the town of the village, it's more than a village, it's a town, Jamestown, here in this valley. And Kunes and his sailors are living in tents, and they are hunting. You can see them carrying a wild pig on a stick there, and they are collecting things like oranges and lemons and apples. Where did those come from? When the Portuguese first navigated the route round the Cape, they planted them there for the replenishment of their own ships. But now the Dutch were the masters at sea, and they picked the fruit planted by the Portuguese. And the next one, now we are just below the equator. There is the lofty peak of Ascension Island, forever cloud-covered. This is Admiral Spin, Cornelis Spin, 1771, close to the equator. Now, we are almost home. When we cross the equator, we celebrate. Many of the people on board now cross the equator for the first time, and now there is a ceremony on board to celebrate these people. It's a baptism for them. And they have not boxing and cricket, but they have rough old sailors' games and a lot of drinking, of course, sponsored by the Admiral. And you will find in the book that the Admiral said, "I am so glad that nothing untoward happened, that nothing bad happened here. One killed the other in a knife fight or something bad like that." Now, we cross the equator. Next one, please. And departing from the Cape, we use the anti-clockwise spin, and the moving water here is called the Benguela current. And it carries us over into the Gulf Stream. And the Gulf Stream becomes the North Atlantic Drift, and it takes us way up there, round the top of Scotland. This section of the passage was called Achterop. They couldn't go through the channel because they were constantly at war with either the French or the British, and sometimes with both at the same time. And they are very close to the Arctic Circle now, where it is very cold, and around the top of Ireland and Scotland and the Shetland and the Danish Orkney Islands, what awaits them there? The Dutch government sent warships to meet them in case the British got to hear of the return fleet coming up and wants to intercept the return fleet, as they sometimes did in 1665 in the case of Admiral de Bitter's fleet. Warships awaited, but also ships belonging to the company carrying pilots, shallow water pilots, because the waters here are quite shallow and the bottoms change constantly. Where there was a sandbank today, tomorrow there's good deep water, but the sandbank is over there. But the fishermen who act as pilots know these waters because they work there daily. And so the company hires these fishermen to act as pilots and to go and wait for the return fleet there. And they bring things like anchors in case ships had lost anchors, and cables and sails, but lovely food, things that the sailors never saw on board, like hams, French wine, German beer, and smoked tongue, and fresh bread, and cheeses, 5-6 kinds of Dutch cheese, Leidse kaas and Boere kaas and Gouda kaas and whatnot. Because of the lovely food, these ships were also called the Vreedskipper. Something else that awaited them there were chaps who wore not surcoats, what are the things that the Arabs wear, those long gowns? Well, they wore gowns without pockets, so that they couldn't pocket anything. And they were called garbeliers. And their work was to start sorting the spices, picking out shells and sticks and putting the best quality there and the poorest quality here and there. So that is what made them there. And then they slowly went down the channel and to their respective harbors. You know, the 6 chambers. Now, the next one, please. Every admiral who brought a fleet safely home had to deliver 3 written reports on the state of the Eastern trade, the state of the Cape of Good Hope, and of their return journey of some 6 months. Were they satisfied with these reports? He was awarded a medal of 12 ounces of solid gold on a gold chain worth 600 gulden, which is the amount that a VOC soldier earned in about 5 years. This medal was earned by Admiral Bersma in 1740. Now, can you enlarge the next picture quite considerably, please? There. This is the company's warehouse in Delft. The cargoes were stored and auctioned to wholesalers in each of the 6 chambers' own warehouses before the onset of the northern winter, which happens in October, that froze the canals and the rivers of Western Europe and made inland travel extremely difficult. The little ice age again, remember that word. This stately warehouse in Delft still survives in beautiful condition. And the next. 1795 at St. Helena Island, the last return fleet, where the greater part of the last return fleet was captured by ships of the Royal Navy, British, and the English East India Company, who had grown up to be the Dutch East India Company's not only greatest rival but superior. It happened at St. Helena Island in August of 1795. And there my story ends. But just show the next slide, please. There is a curious connection between this Frans Naderhout, whose statue stands on the harbour wall at Vlissingen, and the town of Swellendam. Do you know what it is? Now you can either read it in the book or I can give you a brief summary which will take about 10 minutes.
Summary.
You want me to tell you?
Yes.
But as I said, it's going to take time. The Dutch East India Company had a landrost here at the Droostay. You know where the Droostay is, here in Swellendam. And the landrost was in charge of several buitenposten. And one of the buitenposten was there wasn't a village of George. It was called Buitenpost Outeniquala. It is where the town of George is today. And that outstation was manned by a number of woodcutters. And one of them was a woodcutter called Johannes Kunz, Kunz, although you'll find him in the documents as Koens. And the landlords of Swellendam ordered the outstation Outeniquala to send a wagon load of timber to the Cape. Now that's a tremendous journey for an ox wagon, pulling heavy tree trunks. Usually a convoy of 5 or 6 ox wagons loaded with timber. Sorry, I said to Cape Town, that was later. He sent it, bring it here to Swellendam. And he brought it, although he knew that the landlords at Swellendam wanted that timber for his own account. Not for it, but you keep quiet, you do your work, and you bring the timber. When Kunz got back to his outstation at Outeniquala, the man in charge, called him Postholder, ordered him to take another cargo of timber to the Cape. And he refused, which is a deadly sin. Because the oxen were now worn out after all that hard work. And he said, I won't go. And the porter said, well, in that case, I'll send some of these koina with the wagons. And the koina and Kunz decided to go because these were oxen that he had trained himself and had worked with himself for a long time. But the porter also wrote a letter to the landlords saying that this Kunz is an obstinate man and disobedient and refused to work when I ordered him to work. And the landlord looked at this, and he went inside to his desk and he wrote a letter to the governor at the Cape and put it in an envelope and gave it to Kunz and said, now get on your horse, ride to Cape Town, give this to the governor. And the governor opened the letter and read there the accusation against Kunz, and he told Kunz, you see that ship out there in the bay? It is called Woestduin. Join that ship. It's about to sail to the Netherlands tomorrow. So he was banished without a trial, without saying goodbye to his wife or family or friends or anybody, just like that, on Woestduin. Now it so happened that Woestduin was wrecked on the shores of the island of Walcheren, where this fisherman, Frans Naarden, served the company as a pilot. You can see he has the lead in his hand and he has must be about a kilometer of line there, but that's not a kilometer. But it's a very nice statue. He looks out at the shipping going past. One of the ships that go past is a bright orange Coast Guard ship named Frans Naarden, of him. And the first wreck that Frans and his brother, who were fishermen, rescued about half the people from Woestduin, was Kunz was on board. And so Kunz survived. And Kunz went to the Lord, sent him in the Netherlands, and he explained the case to him, and the Lord sent him back to the Cape to rejoin his family, but as a free man, no longer as a company servant. And so Kunz was the man who as a free carpenter, cut yellow wood and cut timbers and also entered the building trade. And he built the first church at Swellendam, and he furnished it with beautiful wooden benches and things, with wood that he purchased for the thing. So that's the connection, because Narada saved the life of Kunz. And Kunz was the builder of your church. Did they ever meet again? The two of them. You can read that in the book. I like the way the Dutch honor their people with statues, etc. They're simple fisher folk with statues, and we don't do it in South Africa, unfortunately. This is the year, it is this year, 250 years since Baltimore performed these great act of heroism, rescuing 14 people from a shipwreck in Table Bay during a winter storm. Who knows about Baltimore? Oh, yeah. You must be about 100 years old then. Okay, now, thank you very much for listening, and if there are questions, please ask the gentleman in front.